I, male, 28, have been considered a catch, and I know that's the most big-headed, idiotic way to start a Reddit post, but hear me out. Obviously, I have flaws, but I'm a catch in the sense that I'm the kind of guy parents tend to like. I have a great job, my mom raised me right and taught me to respect everyone, and I know how to do a lot of things that help out around the house or just tend to be useful. I'm the dude who can help with taxes and fix the sink. Now, this is relevant because, well, both my mom and my sister are extremely into being matchmakers for me. I'm single by choice, but they both constantly try and butt in and ask about my love life and set up matches for me. I live a few states away from them, but that somehow hasn't stopped my sister Isabelle, fake name, and my mom from trying to figure out how to get me settled down. We're an immigrant family, and unfortunately, relationships tend to be almost decided by counsel instead of through individual choice. I'm single because I want to be, but both Isabel and my mom think it's because something is wrong with me. With my mom, I kind of understand that she's from a different generation, and because of that, she's placing her hopes of grandkids and continuing the family line on me. But I didn't expect it from Isabel. She's 2 years younger than me, and while I came to the US when I was 13, she's been here during her teens and acclimatized a lot faster than me. But she still holds on to some weird gender roles and also has an unhealthy idea about family. Recently, she got engaged to a guy called Jason, male 28, from her workplace, and I immediately didn't like the dude. He had a small minded perspective and a quick temper over stupid shit. But Isabel loved him and was desperate to get married. Honestly, I was not cool with the relationship, and I wanted as little to do with my brother in law to be as possible. After the first time our families met, I was also really put off by Jason's sister, Jane, female 25, who was weird, to say the least. She was extremely loud, and on our first meeting as two families, she got drunk and caused a scene. I later found out through sheer coincidence that one of my buddies from work had dated her since she went to the same high school as him. I was morbidly curious, and he confirmed the story after I found Jane's socials. Apparently, she had used him for money, emotionally manipulated him into running away together when they were 16, and then left him at a gas station to go off with some other dude. She had issues, and I only saw the tip of the iceberg. Weird as it was, I thought, oh well, I'll barely have to interact with her, and she's not family, so it's not a big deal. If anything, it just made me realize why Jason is the way he is because of his kind of crazy family. I did tell Isabel about it in a kind of backhanded way of warning her away from her engagement with this guy, but it didn't stop them from heading towards marriage. Isabel and Jason have been engaged for 3 months, and while she's smitten with him, I still don't like the dude or his family. Obviously, I don't make it obvious, but we keep a cool distance from each other. The worst part is that Jane has slowly gotten more and more obsessed with me. It started innocently enough with her following my socials and then maybe replying to my Instagram stories. But I realized it had gone way too far when she asked me out. I politely declined, but she went off on this rant about how nobody wanted to give her a chance, and then ended up blocking me for a week. Then she unblocked me and pretended like everything was normal. I was clearly not having any of that and slowly started just ignoring her. After that, my own sister called me and asked me for the craziest favor ever. She began by asking me about my relationship status, and I said, "It's the same as it always is, Izzy. Stop bugging me about it." To my surprise, she seemed happy that I wasn't seeing anyone and said, "Well, that's cool and all, OP, but my wedding date has been set for a month from now, and I really want to see you there with a +1. To be honest, I think you and Jane would be really cute together, don't you?" No, just no. Hell no. I told her there was no way in hell I would take her insane sister-in-law to her wedding, and told her about the past incidents I had with her. But she brushed it off as Jane's infatuation and said that I needed to give her a chance. Isabelle went nuclear and then said that if I don't bring Jane as my plus one, she's not going to let me come to the wedding because it disrespects Jason. I was super hurt that she would make me miss her wedding over a date, but I wasn't going to back down from it either. I said, if that's how it is, I won't be at your wedding, sis. I guess she didn't think I would actually back out. And she finally confided in me that she'd promised her in-laws that she would help Jane deal with her obsession with me, and part of that was going to be setting up this date for her. That was honestly a trashy move, but I still said I wasn't going. And now my sister is blowing up at me for ruining her relationship with her in-laws, Jane, and even Jason. AITA for not sucking it up for one date with Jane? Update 1. I got a call from my mom, and it turns out that she's well aware of the situation Isabelle asked for her help in convincing me. She was surprisingly practical and said that even if I wasn't attracted to Jane, I should just deal with her for the wedding so that it could go through smoothly. She then tried to guilt-trip me by telling me how Isabelle had built me up as the perfect partner for Jane, how Jane had so much trouble with men, I wonder why, and how I was basically required to take her out just to keep the peace. I was kind of wavering at this point and thought, how bad could it be? I told my mom I'd think about it, but that I was only doing this so that Isabelle could have her wedding. A couple of days after that, I got a text from Jane asking me when I was going to visit her and how we should meet up before the wedding and get to know each other. I asked her what she meant by this, and it turns out that Mom took me saying that I would think about it to mean that I would take Jane. It also seems like Isabelle and Mom hadn't told Jane how strongly I felt about her and spun things around to seem like I had a genuine interest in her, but had commitment issues, whatever the frick that means. At that point, I had pretty much reached the end of my rope, so I told her the true story and said some pretty harsh things. She was devastated, and I am sure that Isabelle would hear all of it. But I was feeling extremely resentful about how I was being used as a pawn by my family. I called my mom and chewed her out for making false promises on top of false promises. I guess it was the weight of their constant meddling that made me react so viscerally. I then called Isabelle and said that if after all the crappiness Jason's parents had poured on her, she wanted to marry him, I would not be her brother any longer. It feels like the calm before the storm right now, and I haven't gotten a response from my family or Jason's family. I guess they're too shell-shocked to react. Whatever happens, I am done being used in this weird game of promises Isabelle has created. Update 2. I don't know how to pack all of this into one update, but many things have happened. The most important one is Isabelle broke things off with Jason. I don't know how she finally got some sense, but she texted me and said that she had left her fiancé and was staying with my parents, and asked me to come and visit so she could apologize and explain her point of view. I was cool with this and decided I should at least hear Isabelle out. When I visited, it was clear that her relationship had not been good for her. She told me and our parents about how Jason had always put her down, and her hunger to settle down made her try and normalize that. After all of that, she also told us that her in-laws were constantly complaining about Jane and how they needed to make sure she wasn't dependent on them in the future. She knew that I wouldn't date her sister-in-law in the long run, but she wanted to win her in-laws' approval so badly that she portrayed it that way. However, when I told Jane the truth, the whole family turned on her and was horrible to her. Jason was constantly belittling her, and she finally had enough and walked out on him. I consoled her, and even my mom apologized to Isabelle because she was super pushy when it came to settling down to my sister as well, not just me. I honestly wanted to go over to Jason's place and break his jaw, but Isabelle talked me out of it. Instead, she promised that she was completely no contact with them, and if Jason ever tried to initiate contact with her again, she'd go for a restraining order. I'm glad that whatever happened, my sister is no longer in a toxic relationship. Yeah, the things she did and the way she tried to set me up with Jane were really problematic. But at the end of the day, it's something we'll get through as a family. We'll talk about it once my sister has processed her hurt, and I will be sure that I also make my point of view understood. YTA, bro. It's not a big deal. It's not like Jane can ruin your entire life over the course of one weekend. Just think of it like a white lie. Isabelle doesn't expect you to marry her sister-in-law. Edit. Nah, just read the updates. Changing it to NTA. Jason's whole family is cuckoo. NTA, it's not healthy for you or Jane. I'm sure she's a troubled person, but if she got to know that you only dated her as a favor, it would blow up beyond control. It's better that you stay honest even if it leads to not attending your sister's wedding. Next story. I, 22, female, have been getting tattooed since I turned 18. I have always loved the art of tattoos, and I'm also someone who likes body modifications in general. I don't have any visible piercings. I'm able to hide them. But like I said, I've always loved the subculture and have quite a lot of tattoos. My father, 59, male, has always hated tattoos, and he doesn't hide his distaste towards them, which I completely understand. Everyone has their preferences and their dislikes. His is a bit overboard, though, where he won't even accept medical care if the nurse has tattoos. I have hid my tattoos for 4 years. I wear long sleeves during the summer, and if I'm going out, I just bring a change of clothes. It's become part of my routine, and it never really bothered me. An estranged cousin came back into our lives a few weeks ago to stir up drama, and he showed my father my Instagram page through a very close cousin's profile. He didn't follow me because I have a private profile and would never accept his request. My father was furious, and for weeks he hasn't spoken to me, which I knew would probably happen. I've been walking on eggshells around him, and he has said a few things to me that have been extremely insulting. I found an apartment because I didn't feel comfortable staying there, and I was going to be moving out in April anyways, and left yesterday. I have now been receiving calls from my brother, 27, turning 28, and mother, 61, telling me that I'm making a mistake, and it is ridiculous that I think it was a good idea to leave because it is only making my father worse towards them. I offered them a place to stay since I'm renting a 3-bedroom basement apartment, and they told me that wasn't right and I should come home. I made my own choices as an adult, and I know I'm experiencing the repercussions of my choices. But I feel like my solution was a better idea than staying in a house where I'm not welcome. AITA? NTA, your mother and brother want you to be your father's emotional abuse punching bag, and basically told you they want you back to make their lives easier. They are not good people. They don't want good things for you. Ignore them. NTA. You are being insulted by your own father over some tattoos. You have the complete right to leave if you want to. If your mother and brother are so bothered by your father's treatment, maybe they should grow a backbone and also leave him instead of blaming you and using you as the punching bag. NTA, but your entire family is. Your mother and brother want you to move back in and put up with your father's bullying because he's making their lives miserable? Screw that. Parents are supposed to protect their kids, not throw them to the wolves to protect themselves. Next story. I'm early 20s, female. Last year I started working at a major company. I entered this job through a scheme for disadvantaged young people. Despite this, the interview process was still incredibly tough, and I'm proud to have made it this far. When I'm not with my team, I hang out with the other girls I've met and befriended through that scheme. The nephew of the CEO started his role at our department a little later and, for whatever reason, has been joining us girls for lunches, etc. He tries very hard to fit in and acts like he doesn't come from a place of insane privilege. He will literally pretend to be humble and downplay his family's wealth just to seem relatable, I guess. The others have been warming up to him, but I'm honestly not buying his rather fake personality. The other day I was sitting at the canteen with another coworker and he asked if he could join us. I didn't want that, but my coworker immediately said yes. Well, he was asking me lots of personal questions about my journey to the company. I told him that the interview process was hard and mentally draining. He nodded and said that it was tough getting into the place, but that his interviews were fine. Even laughed and said he came late to one because of a hangover. This made me mad, and I said, "Good for you." He thanked me and said that things always work out when you just chill out and stop taking things so seriously. This is when I said that we both know he's not nearly as competent as he believes and that he only got the job because his uncle is literally the CEO. My friend, coworker, gasped and looked at me like I was crazy. The nephew shrugged and said I didn't seem to like him. I told him that this wasn't a personal matter, so likes and dislikes are irrelevant. We didn't argue, but he got a little heated and asked me what I want him to do. Then he said I may view him as an overprivileged a-hole, but I'm more or less the same, which makes no sense. So I fully expected him to report me to HR, but to my surprise, he never did. In fact, he started following me on social media accounts and messaging me at work more frequently. My coworker has relayed this incident to the other girls, and the consensus is that I'm a major a-hole. They said that not only was I unnecessarily hostile and rude, but they were also mad that he started hanging out with them less. Not sure if this is a coincidence, but I've also been spending less time with them. AITA for giving my unprompted opinions? YTA, you disliked him from the start purely because of who his uncle is. Everyone else was warming up to him, but you flat out refused. He's trying to fit in, being humble, and you hate him because of his family? Imagine how things could help if you're friends with the CEO's nephew. ESH, he was insensitive for his things work out fine if you just relax, because this is true for people of privilege, but not everyone else. And you were rude to say he's incompetent and undeserving of his job, because it can be true that he only got the job because of his uncle and that he's actually competent at the job. Everyone here could have been a lot more diplomatic, but you were overtly rude. 100% YTA, you judged him for something he has zero control over. And let's put this into perspective. 1. You both had a leg up in order to get interviewed. 2. You have zero knowledge of what his interview process was, and speaking from experience, family members are very often held to higher standards in the family business. 3. He's making an effort to be kind and connect with his colleagues, and you are just being the biggest cockblock to him, having a normal work-life experience in the company. I'd say you are jealous and you need to stop it yesterday. Not cool. Edit. Thank you for the awards and thank you for the conversation. All good points. My opinion was definitely colored by OP's obvious dislike and probable prejudice against this guy. I'm not sold on the telling of the tale, particularly on the bit about a guy coming in hungover and late, but still getting the job. Next story. All right, so my son, 17, has weekly therapy appointments that I take him to. Unfortunately, my husband let our daughter borrow his car and then had an emergency at work, so he had to use my car, so my son and I had to take the bus. It wasn't ideal, but I'd rather the bus than miss an appointment. While it isn't my place to share why he goes to therapy, I will say that he will often forget to eat. I usually make sure he's fed, but due to the mess in the morning, it slipped my mind. The bus wasn't too crowded, but all the seats were taken. My son wasn't doing too well, and I could tell he was feeling dizzy from hunger, the bus. So the second someone got off their seat, I sat him down. I then tried to find a chocolate bar I had in my bag. While this was happening, I noticed an elderly woman and her adult daughter standing beside us. I didn't pay much attention until the daughter tapped me on the shoulder. She asked if my son could move so that her elderly mother could have a seat. I felt really bad. I really did, but my son was not doing great and standing would make it harder. I had found the chocolate and he was eating it slowly, but if he stood up right then, I can assure you he would have fainted. I apologized to her and explained that my son wasn't feeling well. She rolled her eyes at me and said that she saw him standing earlier and that he's a young, healthy teenage boy. He'll be fine. I apologized once again and told her that he wasn't feeling well and that if he was, then he himself would have offered her a seat. The daughter told me to look at her mother, and I admit the poor woman looked really tired. But I couldn't. My son had started to lean against me, so I told the woman one last time that I was sorry and to ask someone else. I then heard them both whispering and calling me an entitled bitch. And when we got off the bus, a woman who got off with us said that a teenage boy can handle standing more than an elderly woman can, and that she hopes someone treats me like that when I'm her age. My son was so out of it, I don't think he even noticed or cared, but I can't get this off my mind. AITA? A totally unrelated woman thought I was along with the two. I wasn't sitting down and did not have a seat. NTA. Having an invisible illness is the pits. For just this very reason, I too get these crashes on occasion, and there's no choice to it. If I don't sit down and get something in me, a Gatorade if nothing else, I will pass out. I've been this way all my life, thin and chunky, and yes, have been to billions of doctors over it. Slight exaggeration. 99% of the time I manage it well, but sometimes forget to eat or think it's been a lot less time since last eating than it has been. Was every other seat taken by an elderly person? Seems ridiculous that your son had the only seat on the entire bus that could be given up. While it may not be your place to say what the issue is, or that you should even have to defend not giving up his seat, in situations like this, it might just save the fuss to say, sorry, we are on our way to a medical appointment and my son is not doing well. I'm sure there is someone else on the bus who is capable of standing and can give up their seat. But my son has a medical issue right now and he cannot stand. Hell, when I was 9 months pregnant, I gave my seat up to an elderly man. I'm sure there was someone else, but you were unfortunately stereotyped and targeted because of his age. NTA. Stay tuned for more stories from our girl relationships.